Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for our pilot experience user group. Let me give a few more minutes for folks to join, and then we'll get started. All right, everybody, let's get started. So what I'd like to do today, hopefully we have a small enough group. I'd like to keep this kind of interactive and encourage you to participate. So I would suggest that we try, if you have a response or something along the way, to just go ahead and unmute yourself and interrupt me. I'll be kind of selfishly taking you through some of the technology that we've been considering and thinking about to get your feedback on it. And then at the end of the presentation, I'd love to open it up for your thoughts about your ideas and so forth. So first of all, we go through the part of the presentation that I have, the things that I would like to cover. If you feel like you'd like to respond to something, then you can always type that response into the chat if you don't feel like speaking up. Otherwise, feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know what you have to say. And then, like I said, we'll have a discussion, try to have a discussion at the end as well. So the first question, technology-wise, has to do with the way we use SMS messages. I'm just kind of curious in general whether you feel like the frequency of SMS messages you get from us is about right. And then also like to have, if anybody has any experience with the responses that you get when you send an SMS message. So sometimes it'll come back, we have a programmed response that will ask you to confirm what the mission is that you're responding to. And then also you have the option to provide some feedback through SMS2. For example, if you feel like weather is a concern for the flight, that kind of thing.
This is Bob Ostrom. I have a kind of a peripheral comment to this. I think you're using about the right number right now. One thing I think it's really important for people to recognize is that the SMS messages will get through to a cell phone when nothing else will. And I recently experienced that my email was, my internet was down for like a week, and my phone service on the cell phone is okay barely in my location at home. And really the only thing that was dependable was an SMS message. So if there's something that's really important, I think it probably should go by SMS message.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I guess the other question is not just, are you getting too many, but are there other things you would prefer to get by SMS that we're currently sending by email, for example?
I think right now, in terms of what it's being used for, is fine. I mean, the email usually works, and it's a little bit harder to deal with long SMS messages, frankly, if you're getting a lot of them. So that's the only thing I would say.
Okay.
I would agree with on the frequency point as well. The ones that I get tend to be the ones that I'd want to get, and sort of, the requesting last minute service or whatever. The only question I would have where it says, respond if you think whether this or that, or, whatever. Does any of that matter? Do you do anything with that data, or can we simplify things and just say, respond yes if you want to be in the game. Otherwise we assume no, or, I don't know. I've never responded with one of those other responses because I assume it doesn't actually matter.
Well, actually, I'll let maybe Sherry jump in on this, but one thing that will happen especially with the alerts, is that they'll send them out on some and they get flooded with responses immediately, and they'll send some out and then it's crickets. And so they're kind of left a little bit wondering why that is. And that's why we built the feedback in there, because if everybody's looking at that flight and seeing the same weather and not responding, that is helpful for them. That
actually does sound helpful now that you describe it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the other piece of that's helpful, and that holds true for the begging emails as well, where that same function is available. That does help us. So we aren't pilots, number one. And we have so many regions to cover. We can't be aware of every weather, all aviation weather across our 13 states. So if we get a response back from, 3-4 pilots in one region saying, hey, it's weather, we then know, okay, this is probably not going to fill. Let's stop looking and let's move on to our backup plan now, because this isn't working. Same holds true for weight or routing or other things. It helps us really to make those adjustments that are going to make it easier for those missions to fill, either in the moment or in the future as well. So it is helpful to us.
Okay, well, I'm going to respond then more often, because I typically haven't unless I wanted to take the flight.
Great.
All right, anything else on the SMS? All righty.
Excuse me, this is Caleb Taylor. I had a quick question on the SMS. It seems a lot of times, because I fly professionally, I'm flying other trips, and as I recall, there isn't an option for just unavailable. There's like weather and some whatever the other choices are. Is there an unavailable or schedule conflict response? Is that useful information to give you that you need to know that we're just, I'd love to do it, but I can't because I'm on another trip. So because a lot of times that'll happen, and I don't respond because there's no response that matches my situation, which is a lot of times I'm on another trip.
There is one called schedule, and maybe that's just a non-intuitive label, but that's the concept.
That's okay. Well, that's what that's for. Okay, I'll just use that then.
So schedule doesn't mean schedule it for me.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Now that I'm hearing that, it sounds like maybe that wasn't a great choice.
Maybe unavailable or conflict or schedule conflict or something.
Yeah, and that's also helpful information for one thing, because we could just get unlucky and find that everybody happens to be unavailable, even though maybe the weather is fine and whatnot.
Right.
The other thing is that we would ideally like to try to use that information to not harass you further, if you've already told us specifically that you just can't do it. So,
or another one is the other day I got one. The plane was down for an annual, so if it was down for maintenance, and so I don't think there's a maintenance issue or aircraft down issue, right? Response.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, that's a good one to add.
So those are my only comments, but other than that, I think it works fine.
Thank you.
Since we are now using big data analytics to figure out how best to operate, our operation, maybe the responses that you want from us should reflect what would help you in your analysis in the future.
Yeah, and I was going to say that in response to Stephen's comment, because I, the data wonk, and I like the data, like no matter what. So I would always encourage you to respond just for that reason alone. But I know that you've got other things to do other than provide me with data. But it is a great point.
Well, I want to just chime in. It's Mark here. It's in relation to SMS, but in a lot of areas, I think that, two factors for me as a pilot that are most important is obviously what day is it taking place. But the other one is also time. And across the platforms, the time is not always there. It's in some places it's not, some places you have to dig or go to the actual mission request form to see it. And I feel like it would be nice to always see the time. And if there is no time, it should say any time. So having a more cross-platform, clear, first level look at the time the mission has to happen is important.
So that's a good, that's a great point. Maybe you adopt a standard strategy. Whenever you put a date, you put a time, just as a matter of process of all your notifications and forms. And it could be, if you don't have a timing, say TBD, then people know, okay, now we know it's to be determined.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something that the coordination team has really worked hard on in the last year, is to collect that appointment time information and try to get specifics about, when that flight would actually have to happen in order to make that appointment work. So, the conflict there is that if the patient is flexible on time, then we would try to want to convey that because then presumably that would make that opportunity available to more pilots. So that's something we're definitely trying to figure out how to handle that.
Yeah, even if it just says flexible, that helps.
Yep.
Or if it says, late afternoon or early morning, any time identifier quickly allows us as pilots to go, oh, I have meetings in the afternoon. Oh, look, this can happen in the morning. Great, boom. Or weather is, always bad in the morning at Santa Monica, so I can't do. I'm not risking a morning.
Yeah. So again, I'm an information guy. So if you put that into all of your standards, that field is going to have to be what's called a variable alphanumeric field. Your data people may have a little problem with trying to utilize that as something useful for their analysis, because a time has a specific format and therefore can be tracked and used in data analytics. So just something to think about. Some little subtleties when you're designing it,
That is a challenge also, for sure.
I mean, we as pilots, we don't care. We just want the data information.
Great. All right, let me move on and talk a little bit about something else that we've been trying to collect in your profiles, which is some preference data. And if you've been a pilot for a while, you may not have filled this out because it's something we introduced about a year ago. What we're trying to do basically is to filter out the flights that don't meet your preferences so that we're not always sending you large lists, many of which are repeatedly not appropriate for you. Trying to make that list shorter and more targeted so that there's less effort involved in going through that list. And we started sending out an email on Sundays with the same kind of missions available that have been going out regularly twice a week. But these Sunday emails incorporate your pilot preferences if you've filled them out. And so you'll notice that it's got some stars there underneath the mission leg number, and those relate to how closely that flight meets your preferences. And then there are some preferences in that profile that'll filter out flights. So for example, if you said you won't take more than 400 pounds, that will actually filter those flights out from the list to try to make it shorter. So my question is, have you filled out your preferences, and have you received this email, and do you have any feedback on it?
I haven't filled it out, and I haven't received any notification to fill it out.
Okay.
Okay, so I've not gone and looked at my preferences lately, but is there a way to, in the preferences, select, maybe there's about 4 airports I want to cover. Is there a way to do that so we filter out all the airports and flights that we're not going to cover? So I get a lot, I'm in Southern California, so I get a lot of stuff that, is all, Sacramento, San Francisco, Bay Area type stuff that I'm not interested in. So there's a way to filter those out other than by mileage, or is there a way to actually specifically put in airport identifiers, so the ones that I will serve? Is that possible?
So that actually relates a little bit to a question that I have later on, which is kind of what are your criteria for determining the flights that you're interested in? And let's set aside for the moment, I can't take more passengers than I have seats, or I can't take more weight than I have capability for, but just in terms of personal preference. So we do have a preference for total distance, like what's the longest trip you want to take, but that doesn't really incorporate what you just said. And so I'm kind of interested in what would be those criteria that you would like us to use to find those preferences.
Yeah, for example, I'm based at Palomar and Carlsbad, CRQ. So there's about 10 airports within spitting distance that I could serve, because very few ever leaves Carlsbad. So, but there's Montgomery Field, there's Oceanside, there's Palm Springs, there's several nearby airports, and if I could put those in within my sphere, where I could, and those trips would show up, so I don't have to filter all the. Sometimes you get these long lists, and you kind of start going through these. I'm not going to fly to San Francisco to fly to somebody to Sacramento, right? So I'm not going to deadhead all the way up there just to go on a short flight. So if I could say, okay, well, this is my home base, and these are all the airports that I will originate a flight from within my sphere, that could help filter some of the stuff that we're not capable of.
I think that's a great idea. Thinking about that, part of what Angel Flight's about is to go from here to there, and here to there is a lot of different places. So you mentioned something about distance. I think that might actually be a good way, like how they do, many times they'll do searches for homes or whatnot. They'll say, 10 miles from this point. In other words, we could define our center point, and then how many mile radius that we, would be okay to.
Exactly. Yeah, you could just draw a circle around to the furthest airport that you want to reach to originate your flight. But, it's not necessarily the length of the flight. It's getting to that, origination that can be much longer than the flight itself. Mm-hmm. So it'd be nice to be able to filter those out that just don't make sense.
I have a question.
That's a great idea. Just draw a circle around your home base airport and say, okay, I'm going to, for 50 miles, I'll cover all these airports.
Got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm on the app right now, and I don't see that profile that you're talking about.
So you would go into your account settings.
Oh, settings.
And then under your pilot section, you would edit your pilot.
Oh, pilot information.
And then you'd find your profile under there.
Oh, so pilot information or something.
Right.
Okay, it's got, it has secondary wing Alaska. I don't know where that came from. I used to live up there, but.
That's probably what it was.
Okay.
You ever seen Alaska? Maybe that's what it was.
27 years ago, but that's, I didn't see what you were talking about. So, okay, I just didn't see, it's different than I was expecting. Or maybe I've got an older version of the app, I don't know, so.
So while we're talking about drawing circles around the airport, what about the idea of efficiency? This is another thing that I wanted to touch on as well, is the concept of efficiency. First of all, do you understand it? And second of all, is that helpful? Because that does incorporate some of what you're talking about.
I think it would help those that have a hard limitation. It's interesting. I find myself looking at the needs because I have pilot friends in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and Tempe, and other places that I either could call them up and say, "Hey, did you see this? I'll fly right seat with you," or "Hey, I'm gonna do this one. You want to come fly right seat with me?" So I think it's a good schema for those that have a hard criteria. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't, for me, I just wouldn't use it, and I get all of the ones I want. So I think it works well. It's a personal choice at that point.
Mm-hmm. Is the concept of efficiency generally understood?
Well, when you say efficiency, efficient for who?
So this efficiency, if you look at this, the display here of the list that I've excerpted, it's the column in the right. And essentially it's, if you were to take the round trip distance that the passenger travels, in other words, their origin, their destination, and you add any additional leg that you would need to make that trip. So if you had to go to another airport, pick up the passenger, take them to their destination and fly back home, that triangular distance divided into the round trip that the passenger does, that's where we get the efficiency figure. So if the passenger is either at your home base and you're taking them to treatment, or they're coming back and the treatment is where you're based, then it's going to be 100% efficient because you're not going out of your way at all.
I call this the rubber band route. If you have point A and point B and you're anywhere in between, you essentially have no further to go no matter where you are in between, because you're going to leave your place, go someplace, pick up something and go back to your place.
Right.
And as long as you're inside the rubber band, you have no inefficiency. If you're outside of the rubber band, you have an efficiency. Is that the kind of
any extra stop count as an inefficiency? Like even if it's along the line of flight, if I have to stop, presumably that's not 100% efficient.
Right. So that's why my point is, I'm not sure I understand what efficiency you guys are trying to get to, either for our benefit or for your benefit, the operational benefit.
So going back to Caleb's example, if he's in Oceanside and then we have a flight from, let's say, Palo Alto to Redding, for him to fly to Palo Alto, go to Redding, and then back home again, that would be extremely inefficient because that 3-leg distance is going to be so much larger than the round trip.
So inefficient for us as pilots.
Yeah,
that's the key point. It's about us. It's efficiency for our operation, and therefore whether we should take the flight.
Right.
So anything that's less than 100% is something that is probably going to have to go out of our way to do. But
yes. Although, let's say if you're based at Santa Monica and the flight's leaving from Van Nuys or vice versa, and then going up to the Bay Area, that efficiency would be very close to 100% because, the distance you're going out of your way is negligible. However, it is still an extra stop.
Right. So that's
another way of looking at it, though. The other way of looking at it, this happens here in the Seattle area. I'm at Boeing Field. Renton is, 10 minutes away by car.
Yeah.
If I see it's 95% efficient because the passenger wants to go from Renton, I'm like, hey, if you want to come to Boeing Field, I'll take you from there, but I'm not going to fly the plane up and over the hill and land for the sake of it.
And other factors that go into that, going into Van Nuys can be a nightmare. I mean, so you have the complexities of going into an airport that you may not even want to go into, even though it's 5 minutes away. So that would kind of change your efficiency algorithm, because that way then you'd have to rate each stop as desirable or not.
That's a good point, and definitely I know people have airports that they feel that way about, specific airports. I guess if you were to look at a flight and you would say it's 99% efficient or it's 95% efficient, that is definitely a case where you can ask for that airport to be moved if the passenger can go.
Right. Here's another example. I took one the other day that was supposed to leave John Wayne, and they wanted us to fly up to John Wayne, which is very close. It's right along the way and we were going up to Boeing Field, but we were going in a Citation 10, and for us to move that airplane from Carlsbad for a 10-minute flight up to John Wayne is a nightmare. And not only the logistics, but the cost with landing fees and all that stuff. So we said, look, it's from where your hotel is 10 minutes further to drive to Carlsbad. So that efficiency thing, from my perspective, I think the only thing that would matter to me is the 100%. So if it's less than 100%, it's going to be a little bit subjective, because you'd have to then start digging into the details and say, well, okay, why is it not 100%? We're not, there's a stop or something along the way. Does that make sense? In other words, that's why it would be better to, in my opinion, to add something about saying, well, we're not going to go into this airport, so just don't even include me on those. But again, that doesn't really work, because we were able to make it work out of Palomar instead of John Wayne. So if we hadn't seen that, then we might have missed the trip.
Yeah, quick comment from the mission ops end of things. You should always contact us, and I know it's an extra step for you, but if you want to change an airport to, you know, somewhere within the general vicinity of where it's at. So Santa Monica, Van Nuys, those would be good examples. Even Santa Monica, Burbank, Stephen, definitely for you, Renton, Boeing Field, any of those Seattle area airports, the San Diego area airports. Give us a call and let us know, or send us an email, and we will work with the passenger if we can to get them moved to an airport that's convenient for you. Sometimes they can do it on their own. Sometimes they don't have that capability. For example, we have one passenger who takes the bus to and from, you know, her appointments, and going to a different airport probably wouldn't work for her. But in many cases, if they can't do it on their own, we'll arrange an Uber or a Lyft for them, or look for an Earth Angel to get them where it's convenient for you.
Now, Sherry, you can use some of the grant you got. I mean, foundation money you got for Earth Angels, but also for an Uber. If Earth Angels, that would be another way of providing Earth Angels.
That's right. That's part of our passenger assistance fund. You know, the other term you may have heard is no passenger left behind, and so we do get passengers that say they can't afford the ground transportation, even if they get the air transportation. In that case, we'll step in and help them. So,
okay, so that money is available for that. That's good.
Yep, and the ops team is going to jump out now, Stefan. So I know you can well handle all those ops questions, but we're getting ready for our next presentation at 3.
If I can't answer it, I'll just make something up.
Bye, guys.
Just make it sound good.
See you soon.
Right. Thanks.
So Stefan, you're bringing up a lot of interesting options. Are these options that you're brainstorming, or are these options that are either in or going into our profile options?
Well, you know, really one of the reasons that I was so excited to have this opportunity to kind of have a focus group is because, you know, I really want to get the pilot input on some of these ideas, because, you know, we toss these around with the coordination team a lot. And I mean, ultimately we have ideas, and usually what we'll do is we'll try something and see what the response is. But we're trying to make the process easier for the pilots, obviously. And, you know, like I said, we have ideas, but we're not sure if they're the right ones. So this is a great opportunity to get your feedback.
What kind of commentary have you had from pilots already in the past that motivated this idea of making the list more targeted?
Well, it's also, you know, to some degree, we look at the behavioral data. So, you know, Caleb made the comment about Wallace wanting to fly in and out of his own base, and a lot of people feel that way. I mean, honestly, most of our flights are conducted by the pilot in and out of their own home base. And when that efficiency figure drops below 85%, the number of flights that are flown at that lower efficiency just plummet. However, there are a handful of pilots, and I would call them really the frequent flying pilots, where they don't obey that rule at all. Like, they're happy to go, you know, Montgomery to Reading, pick up a passenger, take them to Palo Alto, and go home. And that's just, you know, that's their personal, the way they like to fly. So, you know, we would love to be able to capture those kinds of preferences for different pilot segments and apply them, you know, and be able to give you shorter lists. And the feedback we've had on the length of the list is that a lot of people don't fly. You know, we're in the 90-10 or 80-20 rule in terms of the number of pilots who fly the flights that we have. So we have a lot of pilots who aren't engaged. And our hypothesis is that it's just too hard to find a flight. Like someone like, well, most of you are willing to do the work, you know, to find the flight. And I think we made it too difficult. We're making it too difficult, but you're willing to do the work anyway.
Right. Yeah, if you could make it more targeted, it would really, really help. But have you, just on a side note, have you noticed a sharp decrease in the pilots' willingness to take these trips during the pandemic, or has it stayed consistent in years past?
Well, we actually polled the pilot population a couple of times on that subject, And I believe
coming through.
I believe it's about 60% have said that they are still willing to fly.
Right.
So,
did you start getting the caveat that there had to be testing done?
you know, I think it's more that there are people who are either in a vulnerable population themselves, or maybe they're caretaker for a family member or something like that. They just don't want the exposure.
Right.
Period.
Well, the reason I ask is I work with CalDart, and we had, in the past 10 months, we've had probably, I don't know, 300 flights, 400 flights, and many of the older pilots would like to fly with the right seat, but they require that they have a test done within the last 2 weeks, within 2 weeks of flight. So I didn't know if that was also happening with Angel flight.
No, and I think it just a kind of a broader concern about being in the FBO and the whole thing. So, all right, let me go ahead and move on. I would like to ask you about the ratings feature and favoriting. So you may have noticed in the missions available list, there's an option to rate a mission. And there's also not really a favorite, but it's like a bookmark. So if you were to check the heart on that mission leg, then you'd be able to go back and filter the list by those sort of bookmarked missions. But again, that's also information that we're collecting and using on our end for statistical purposes, but also if you were to bookmark that flight, you'd probably be on a short list to get called if they started making phone calls for that flight.
Haven't touched either one of these.
Okay.
Sorry, just haven't touched them.
Okay.
I've seen them, but I've ignored them.
Okay.
I'm the same. This is Bob. I've seen them there and kind of wondered what they were for and didn't think about it anymore.
Thank you. All right.
So, Stefan, Richard here. So just, is that the direct link? So when you file your mission report, you get an opportunity to star the mission. Does that get replicated here in the field when you get to select a flight then?
No, the stars in the mission report are really more about your experience on that flight, post-flight. And this is a way of saying, it's a way of giving us feedback to say, well, listen, I'm never going to consider that flight. I'd give it 1 star. Why? It could be any reason. It could be because you don't like the airport, you don't like the runway, you don't like the food, at the airport, whatever. You don't have to, that's just like, I don't want that flight, versus, yeah, this is a perfect flight for me. I'd love to see like this again, except I just can't, I can't take this particular flight for whatever reason, my schedule. So it's that kind of thing. That's the feedback that we're looking for here.
Okay, I didn't know that. Sorry, I didn't know that. That's news to me as well. So, okay.
Is there a way we can give a negative feedback on this? In other words, instead of a star, we can have an X to put? As an example, you just happen to bring up something, a flight that I've considered a couple times, but I can't figure out for the life of me whether I want to go into Nampa, Idaho or not, as opposed to Boise. If that said Boise, I would have already probably done this flight 3 or 4 times. But
why not Nampa? I mean, curious.
Well, frankly, it'll cost me $100.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And besides that, it's, I'm not as familiar with it. Boise, I've been into probably 20 times. It's easy to get in and out of, and the fuel's significantly different from my plane.
What kind of, what do you Jet A?
Yeah, it's Jet A. But
yeah, I have a friend who has a turboprop. He had the same problem. He was going to do a flight last week that way. He said, boys, you can get it for $2.30 and Caldwell or Napa, I think it was like 4 something. Yeah, I understand.
Yep.
So that means that that's something that you should make aware to the scheduling group, and they can see if the patient can just go to Boeing. I mean, go to.
Yeah, and I've done that. I've done that on alternatives where I was more interested in going to that area, I guess, is a good example, And this one, it's like, it'd be okay, but why bother?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I like to fly to places I've never been. That's one of the things I like. Pick the pairs as much as I can of something I've never done. So I understand. Some people like the familiarity. I like the difference, the change. My goal before I die is to fly into every general aviation airport in the Western United States.
You know, the state of Washington has an arrangement that way that you can check off all the airports.
That's cool. That's a good idea because half of them you can't even find. They're so obscure.
Good point.
So as Sherry said earlier, if you want to change the airport, you can. Speaking on her behalf, since she's not here anymore, I don't know what the geography is out there. You know, I'm up in Washington State, but as you can tell, I'm not exactly local. But is Nampa to Boise like Carlsbad to Orange County, or how far away?
Probably more almost like Carlsbad to Oceanside. It's not that far.
So you can. So Bob, I heard you say you'd have taken this flight a couple of times if only it were that other nearby airport. It's a travesty that you didn't. No disrespect to you, but the process needs to be you get in touch with all of us get in touch with for any flight, the operations team, and get the airport changed.
I've probably done that on 15 or 20 different airports. In fact, it's kind of almost laughable. It's a lot of times, I mean, I never go into Renton. I always go into Boeing Field. I don't go into Santa Monica. I always go into Van Nuys. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them that I've asked them to change, and they normally do if they can. And I don't exactly know why I haven't on this one, other than it just, it wasn't quite worth the effort, I guess. I mean, it's a bad thing to say, but.
Well, okay. So let's ask a question about you as a pilot. Your concern about airports has to do with your equipment, and that's a very valid concern.
Yeah,
especially when you're paying for the fuel.
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, right. I'm not going to fly into Palo Alto. I mean, it's not going to happen.
I don't think I don't know what you're flying, but probably it's almost physical.
Well, it's a Malibu jet prop.
Oh, that's what I fly up there too. It's nice there. I fly one out of Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. But there's some you'll fly into and some you won't.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm wondering is there a way that a pilot can put into their profile something about this issue? And I'm trying to think what criteria we could utilize, because a Jet A aircraft always has just some differentiation with it, and probably airport is with the way that Angel flights, airports go, because we always try to find the closest airport to the patient. That might be something that would be valuable to have in there, because I'd hate to see a great pilot with a great airplane not take a flight because they get tired of having to call every time or something, which is always is an issue.
I hate to interrupt, but the chat function does not seem to be working. There are 2 chat questions in there, and I have one myself. Again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would like to go back to this discussion about the rating on your the itinerary or wherever. Yeah, will that apply to Earth Angels as well?
Yes, it does.
And there's another one from a D.H. Keller that I don't know whether you can see. He can't seem to find the place to put his preferences. The chat doesn't seem to be acknowledging our chat statements.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm keeping an eye on the chat and trying to kind of weave them in to the discussion. So
I'm sorry to have interrupted.
Yeah, no problem. I did definitely want to get to your question.
So I think the rating system needs some more discussion, probably. I mean, it's a great idea, but probably none of us even knew what to do with it, which is, kind of sad. But then there seems to be potentially some other things we could add to it.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, thank you. That's very helpful. Let me move on to the discussion thread. Do any of you have experience with using the discussion thread, and have you found it helpful or confusing?
very confusing at times. And I addressed this, I think it was either yesterday or earlier today in another discussion group.
Okay, good.
Which discussion thread are you talking about? I'm sorry.
So if you go on the missions available list, and there's a number of other places where you can access the discussion thread, you'll see this button here that says to view.
And what happens when you click on that? What happens to you?
Nothing bad, I promise.
No, are we told to stand by?
You don't blow up.
Are we told to stand by? Does it say we'll call you back next Christmas?
Why don't I give some examples? I do use the discussion thread, and it could actually help with some of the issues that were raised a few minutes ago. So if what you see in the discussion thread is any chatter between pilots considering the trip, or perhaps pilots who have committed to the trip and are exchanging ideas about where and when to meet and coordinating their trip. And so you might see that. Once you participate in the discussion thread, you also get email copies of any new points that go into the thread, which is helpful. And I'll give you an example, 2 ways that I've used it. I may see a multi-leg trip, let's say a 3-legged trip 2 weeks from now, and 2 of the 3 legs are filled. I might go into the discussion thread and I just type the words monitoring this flight. I'm just monitoring the flight, which is a clue to the ops team that if they can't fill that 3rd leg and want Big Iron to do all 3 legs, or if there's a weather issue, then I'm willing to take it, but I'm not trying to, go over top of or take the trip away from others. The other thing that occurs to me, and this is to Bob's discussion point earlier, you could also just go into this in the discussion thread and say, hey, willing to take this flight if it gets changed to Boise.
Yep.
And there's a little box you click on that says alert coordinators, which means after you type it, click the box, it will alert the coordinators, just submit it. That's all you have to do. And they'll pick up on that. And if the trip doesn't get filled and they can move the person to Boise, then they'll probably give you a call. So it's just a way of injecting yourself or participating in the conversation around the flight. And I have found it to be quite helpful along the way.
Great.
I'd like to just agree with you. In fact, I've used it multiple times for doing that. In other words, saying I can do it if we leave from Boeing Field instead of Renton, or, Van Nuys instead of Santa Monica, or whatever. And it really works good most of the time. Unfortunately, there is a breakdown in it sometimes when you click that little thing, the little box to make sure the coordinator sees it. It doesn't always happen. I think it's getting a lot better. I brought it up in one of the other discussion threads as well. I mean, it's really a good thing that it saves a lot of time most of the time.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. It's a useful feature once you get into it. It's quite helpful.
Yeah, and the coordinators really use that ticketing system, that they kind of live in there, and they do manage their flights that way. And as you probably know, one coordinator is assigned primary responsibility for every flight now. So that's been really helpful in terms of managing this process. However, there are definitely cases when, they can't give 100% to each flight. And so there are times when I think things do slip through. But, one thing we wanted to try to do with this feature is to engage more conversation directly between all the parties involved. And that includes Earth Angels as well, just to try to eliminate middlemen, middle people from the process. All right, that's good feedback. So in terms of the missions available list, I'm just curious to see if people feel like the filters that are available on the missions available list are useful. And are there other things you would like to see in there?
I find them useful. I don't know if there's a way that you could select your filter it so that you have your favorite pop up each time. So I don't have to go through all the wings to the bottom of the list to Washington. And, it's there every time I open up the app or the website. I don't have to filter it because I have a favorite filter, if you like.
Well, now that's a great question. Does this have to be, I haven't used this, does this have to be filled in each time you want to use it, or can you save your last filter in there? So maybe you use the same filter all the time.
So perhaps confusingly, there are 3 versions of the missions available list. And there is a view of the missions available list that practically no one uses because honestly, it's just way too complicated. It has filters for everything, including like, I don't know, the hair color of the passenger. And that you can save your filters. So you can save your favorite hair colors for your passengers, but no one uses that. People use this one, or they use what we call the compact view, which is in the next slide. And so the compact view is obviously compact, but also allows you to sort these columns. So for example, if you wanted to sort by weight, cut off your weight at a certain point, cut off the number of passengers, or also trip distance. So, if I'm not going to go more than 300 miles round trip, you can use this list. So, again, we're trying to streamline the experience, and I don't think having 3 versions of the list is really a great solution, but I also don't know what people like about which ones and that kind of thing.
Is this compact one going to be the one that's on the app?
So the app is more like the basic view. So the thing that people don't like about the compact view that I've heard is that they don't get the whole itinerary. In other words, they don't see like, that's just an individual leg. You don't know if there are 2 other legs and as a part of the mission. And some people like that, the big picture view, which the basic view gives you, and also the app gives you as well. So we've gone with the basic, modified basic view on the app.
I've been using the app to do this much more than I did, say, 6 months ago. And generally, I've kind of gotten used to the idea that it's clunkier, for lack of a better description, because because of the format. The one thing I'd be wondering about is it possible that we could put a filter in there, like is on the main website one, that we don't have to look at the Earth Angel ones if we don't want to? Because if we could, essentially, that's going to get rid of, more or less half of them, and even more than that, because a lot of times the Earth Angel ones will still be open, and the flight itself will already be taken, and yet that's going to show up as a quote available flight.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Wouldn't that be valuable to put that in our profile, whether we're pilots or we're ground?
Well, I mean, other times when you want to be able to see whether, what's going on as Angel too, but I don't think, if you could just be able to turn it on and off, that would be good.
There you go. Yeah.
I like that. And I'll point out that actually the filters do save in the app. So
they what?
The filters do save in the app. So in other words, if you select Washington Wing, it's going to be selected when you come back.
Just on the app, not on the website.
Just on the app.
Okay.
Just on the app, right?
So we have a website for the laptop and an app for the cell phone.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just as
to the question that came in from the chat, yes, these screenshots are all from the web applications, the website, not the app.
Stefan, just very selfishly, in terms of another filtering criterion that would be helpful, total trip distance, i.e. if it's a 2 or 3-legged trip, I tend to look for ones over a certain mileage as opposed to individual leg lengths is not as important.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's a great question. What does the leg trip tell me? I see 2 different numbers.
Well, this is my, based on my profile where I've specified my home base. And so if I were to do that first leg, then I would be traveling 1,700 miles total to make a 335-mile trip. In other words, I got to go from my home base, the rubber band thing that you were talking about earlier.
Gotcha. Now you say that's an option?
You can select the compact view.
No, I'm saying the two numbers, or are they always there? The leg trip.
Yes, on the compact view. Yep.
Oh.
Alrighty, let me ask you about the My Flights feature. And this is actually quite similar on the web app and the mobile app. The idea is that these are the flights that you have either upcoming or past. And so this is where you kind of would be your go-to place for a flight that you have upcoming, or actually a driving trip that you have upcoming as well, to get information like the itinerary if you need to pull up some information about contacts, or you can file your mission report here, or file waiver, that kind of thing.
You said this is ones we are yet to take, or ones we have already completed?
These are the ones that you've signed up for, but haven't happened yet.
Okay, and you said, I thought I heard you say on the list it would also show the ones you have completed?
Yeah, there are two different tabs. One is for upcoming flights, and then one for your past flights.
Okay.
So past flights would be where you would file a mission report, or if you wanted to look up a mission report from a past flight. And then these are for the ones that haven't happened yet.
We've talked about this before, Stefan. It would be helpful to have a link here to the full itinerary, so you could see the patient's whole journey. You could see what other flights are linked to you, what the return trip or the original trip is, that type of thing. So you can see the whole itinerary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, when you add to your calendar, does it give you the option to do, you know, a 365 or Google? Does it do that?
Yeah, I believe it does. I believe it gives you the iCal, or the other one, the Outlook. I can't remember which is which.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually use this quite a bit on flights, both what has been and also what's coming up. It's a lot easier sometimes to see it all in one place on the app than it is to go through it in other places. So I think it's a good thing.
Well, that's really the hope with the app, is that the app would be, you know, really make the day of the flight or the day of the drive much easier. Yeah, so that's good. Good to hear.
One other thing I think would be helpful is when talking about an airport, you also give it the identifier code.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
So is my assumption correct here? Phelps Field, it says Spokane. Is that you pull up the county?
Well, I believe it's the name that's in the airport database.
Well,
or it might be the city.
Well, I don't know.
It is in Spokane.
Is Phelps Field in Spokane City?
Yes, Spokane. Phelps Field was the original airport of Spokane.
Oh,
and so it's still there. And Spokane International is about 15 miles away, out in what used to be the prairie or whatever, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I shoot approaches into Phelps Field. I didn't, just curious why they put the word Spokane there. Okay. I didn't know the history.
So we've got about 7 minutes before 3 o'clock, and I did want to give anyone a chance to bring up anything that they wanted to bring up. I still have more questions that I can continue to ask, but I want to make sure that I give anybody an opportunity to ask anything that they might have, or suggest anything that they might have to suggest.
I sense that there's a whole lot more people out in our population of our pilots and whatnot that'd be interested in giving input into this. Maybe you actually doing a separate one other than today, and actually, you know, send out emails to interested pilots who've used it. You know, say here's the link, go use it, and then let's have a conversation. Because I suspect that there's a lot more ideas out there. Yeah,
and actually one of the things I was going to ask, and let me just pop up a little poll here that you can feel free to respond to. Would anybody be interested in being a part of a panel? And it's not like a big commitment or anything. So I would do just exactly what Ron suggested. I would send out things. You could feedback if you like. I would love to have regular sessions like this informally that you could come to or not, depending on your availability. So it'd be that type of thing. And so if that's something you might be interested in, please just respond to the poll, and that'll
Stefan, is this a homegrown application, or is this tacking on to something else like Salesforce?
It's homegrown.
Okay. The reason I pose is there's an awful lot of similarity with this and what the American Red Cross has done through partnership with a couple of large companies, same kind of software.
Yeah, well, any of the good ideas they stole from us. Any of the bad ideas.
You stole from them.
Yeah, right.
Well, I've been working with them for 15 years, and they seem to, their most exciting thing they do is they keep changing the acronyms for everything. Every 6 to 8 months, we get a new name for the same thing. But they are great. They are a great organization. They do fantastic work. Don't get me wrong.
So, so a couple of things have come in through the chat here. So if you have any specific problems, like logging in, for example, please reach out to John. John will troubleshoot those with you and make sure that you get on both the app and the web. And yeah, if you're interested in more information about the app, John, I did a session yesterday, which I think is up for an Academy Award. And so, you know, that's a do not miss kind of experience. But I did like the app 101, and you might want to tune in for that. That's available by video now. The links to the videos, by the way, are on that same page where you used to get here. So I'm happy to continue talking for another 15 minutes or so. I do have to jump into the next session, but I'll kind of leave it up to you guys as to whether you want to keep going or not.
Good discussion, Stefan. I found it helpful. I learned some things every time.
I agree 100%.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Me too.
Excellent. Yeah, great. Glad I tuned in.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and I really appreciate all your input. And like I said, if you're interested in being on that panel, please let me know, and I'll start reaching out.
So, Stefan, I do have one question. Earlier yesterday, I think it was, there was a presentation by some college students regarding big data analytics, essentially. I didn't get a sense, really, are they just playing and learning, or are they actually committed to providing a useful end product? But it seems like a lot of what you're doing here either was a result of it or a potential input to what they're doing. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, they, you know, the goal of the project is definitely to provide concrete deliverables back to us. And it always kind of depends on how much they bite off and how complicated it turns out to be, whether they're actually able to deliver something. And so what happens in that situation is those students, they have a choice of a bunch of different projects that they can sort of bid on or show they're interested in. And there's a group that chooses the nonprofit, you know, the Angel Flight, partly because they want to do good in the world, and partly because they feel like this is an opportunity to work with a small organization where they can actually have some impact. And they know that we're responsive, and so we can actually implement whatever they come up with. And so that's an appeal, like the fact that they can actually see it. And we have definitely implemented, you know, those models, but, you know, we're still kind of refining how we use them and what we do with the responses from the models.
The reason I ask is I in my companies that I've owned, I've utilized this concept several times, mostly to help the students learn, you know, have a real life example. But one of the real things that bothers me the most is when they're done, and you get no support, no questions answered, no additional coding capabilities. So you end up with some sort of a product or value add, but it's very difficult to move forward with it. That's what I'm curious.
Yeah, and you know, they try to mitigate that. I mean, one nice thing about the fact that we've been able to do this practicum several years in a row is that the students do pick up on what the previous students did, and the continuity is Sanjay, the professor who manages that. So that's mitigated a little bit. There's still definitely some of that, but these models, the 3 models in particular that they're working on this year, have been in the works for 3 years.
Well, this is the third group who've worked on essentially the same project.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. But I found it to be really valuable, honestly.
Well, it makes you think, if nothing else. I mean, as an organization, it makes you go, oh, there's another way to slice this bread.
And, you know, there's a lot of ideas that I have that I just don't have the time to follow up on. You know, these data science projects are so time consuming and
yep.
Yeah, tough. So anyway, yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
So I guess the basic question is there a plan to integrate these capabilities into the operational software, or that's yet to be determined?
We've started to do it. Hang on one second. I'm just going to give everybody John's address.
Okay.
It's member.info@angelflywest.org. Or you can reach him at johnj@angelflywest.org. So yes, we've integrated it to some degree. We now run the model against all of the new itineraries that are created and all the new mission requests that are created, and that information comes back to the coordinators in their Zendesk tickets. So actually, if you view the discussion thread, sometimes you'll see those in there. And I think that's been helpful, but it hasn't really been productized yet. You know, it's not understandable and clear to them. There's no clear direction as to what they're supposed to do or how they're supposed to use the information. So that's part of what we want to try to do this year.
Okay.
All right, who's John J? I missed that. You're giving us email.
John J @angelflight.west.
What is he? Is he an IT guy or something, or I missed that?
So John is the member services person on the coordination team.
Okay.
And so he handles all of the member onboarding and issues having to do with member services,
okay.
part of which is technical support with the website and the app. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm catching up after many years. I got involved in '99, and a bunch of things have happened. And now, anyway, now I thought, okay, let's see what I can, pick up here. So I'm trying to get back up to speed with some things. So thank you.
Great. Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you. You know, he's your man. He's very technically savvy and just nice guy and very motivated to help you get back up in the air.
So John J @angelflightwest.org. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I will say thank you to everybody, and I will wrap it up.
Very good.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Yep.
Thank you.